Violent crime dropped by 54%. They built the double-layer border fence in San Diego, in the San Diego sector, and violent crime dropped there as well. We have got to build that double-layer border fence now, and we need to send troops to the border, and we need to fully fund those troops and allow them to have real rules of engagement. And we need to make sure that we fund E-Verify. And we need fighters in Washington who are not going to be mealy-mouthed when they go up there and have to listen to certain members of our own party who want to push for amnesty. And it is amnesty. That is a big difference, I think, between those who are conservative and those who are just Republican.
Thank you very much. Our children and grandchildren will be adversely affected by the cost of Obamacare, plus, as well as small businesses. What do you intend to limit its effects in Congress, in your efforts in Congress, Mr. Keeney?
The only way to fix Obamacare is to repeal it. And that's the only solution, because it isn't going to work. It's just not going to work. I'm the only one here that's actually received his notice, cancellation of his insurance. It's amazing. I received this December 18th, the day of our last debate. And if you don't mind, I'd like to read a little of it to you. Here's the stupidity of it. Over the last few weeks, I've had to write similar letters to many of my clients advising them of their current group health insurance policy that it will not comply with the Affordable Care Act and thus be terminated as of their policy renewal in 2014. Pardon me, I'm having a little trouble on the distance. Although your policy has provided tremendous benefit and peace of mind over the past 20 years, it does not meet the minimum requirements as defined under the Affordable Care Act. Your policy will now have to include additional benefits such as maternity and newborn care, as well as mental health and substance abuse disorders, as any other illness. In addition, pediatric dental and vision will also be required under your new policy. The government has also mandated substantially lower deductible options than you have enjoyed in the past. Each of these policy requirements will add greatly to the cost of your new plan. You think you're exempt, that you're not going to get that kind of a notice. But we're all not exempt. We're going to get those notices, and there's going to be, according to numbers I've seen, as many as 100 million more people going to get it. That's 1/6 of the economy. The medical business is 1/6 of the economy. And that's exactly what this president told us he was going to do. Going to reshuffle the cards, and he was going to change the wealth in this country. We've got to put a screeching halt to it, and this is as good a place to start as any. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Quasman?
Ann Kirkpatrick loves Obamacare so much, she voted against the Keep Your Own Health Insurance Plan Act. That's how much she's doubled down, and that's why she's going to go home. We need to send proven fighters to Washington, D.C. I stood up against my own party to fight against the Obamacare Medicaid expansion in this state. I think that we can have, we can't just say we're against Obamacare and that's it. We need to have good conservative solutions. Being able to have personal, tax-free health savings accounts that are portable, that if you lose your job in this bad Obama economy, you can take your health insurance with you. I believe that we need to be able to buy health insurance across state lines that lowers the cost of insurance by increasing the pool. I believe we need major FDA reform so I don't have senior citizens in my state legislative district who have to go down to Mexico every month to buy their drugs. That's unconscionable, although the tacos are good. I'll tell you what I'm doing on Monday. I'm dropping a bill in the state legislature, which starts on Monday, that says if you are fined under Obamacare by not complying, you can take that money and you can write it off your state income tax. because we're going to stand up where Washington, D.C. and Kirkpatrick and Barack Obama have failed. We're going to repeal Obamacare, and we're going to replace it with free market, conservative, positive solutions to save this country. We're not done yet. I promise you, we are not done yet.
Okay, do you plan to limit your time in Washington with a self-imposed term limit, Mr. Quasman?
I signed term limit, a pledge for term limit legislation. I believe that we need to introduce, well, we already have it introduced. We'll see how far it gets and see if the president signs it. Matt Salmon's bill, which puts a constitutional amendment of 3 terms in the United States Congress. I believe we need term limits, but here's the problem. Just like Matt Salmon learned firsthand, if the good conservatives go home but Nancy Pelosi is still there, we're not any better off. We have term limits in this country already in place. They're called elections. We have them every 2 years. If we think term limits are going to be the end-all be-all to save our Constitution, we have another thing coming to us. We need to get back to constitutional principles. We have term limits in Arizona, and we got the biggest welfare state expansion through Obamacare last year. The term limits aren't the solution to everything. The Constitution and adhering to the Constitution is what's important. Now that said, I believe in being a citizen legislator, but I'm not going to term limit myself, but I will be happy to term limit myself through a constitutional amendment. Therefore, everybody goes home. I'll be just fine with that.
Thank you. Mr. Keeney?
I'll guarantee you I've got no desire to stay up with them squirrels very darn long. If I get up there and I can't see we're doing some good, you won't have to vote me out to come home. I promise you I'll be down here. I'm for term limits, 100%. That's the biggest problem we got. Those guys are in there, they get locked in, and they stay. And that's what I addressed in my opening statement, was the career politicians. I have no desire to be a career politician. I'm 57 years old. I got 3 grandkids. And I'm not going to spend my time in Washington after I'm about 65. I can assure you that. I would say no more than 3 terms would I ever stay. And I'll be darn surprised if I stay for 3 terms. Thank you.
Regarding, Mr. Quasman, regarding the Second Amendment, would you be in favor of any bill which limited firearm magazine limits or banned certain military style weapons?
No.
Okay. Mr. Keeney?
No, so there's not a chance. It isn't the gun killing the people. Doesn't have a thing to do with it. Thank you.
I figured you might say that. This final question from the audience. What book have you read or do you remember reading that has had an impact on forming the ideology that you currently have, your outlook towards government and the administration of government? Mr. Quasman?
The first political book I ever read was The Conscience of a Conservative by Barry Goldwater. And a lot of people, I think, in this room, that's where they decided, hey, heck yeah, he's right. We believe that government exists to protect individual liberty and can create an environment through limiting itself and protecting individual liberty and property rights to allow the individual citizen to go as far as their God-given talents can take them. That's what I believe. We do this through adherence to the United States Constitution and the principles of our founding fathers. Barry Goldwater's Conscience of a Conservative brought together a group of economic principles that I think were strongly perfected by Milton Friedman, and a group of political principles that were the amalgam of the writings of Jefferson and Madison and even all the way back to Locke. I love talking to Tea Party crowds because I can say these things and people know what I'm talking about. It's great. We believe in constitutional, conservative, limited government. And we need to get back to that. And imagine what this country would be like if we were able to take off the chains that have been weighing us down. That's why I'm so optimistic, guys. It's because we don't forget how to be teachers or doctors or miners or ranchers. We don't forget how to be economists or lawyers. Unfortunately, I'm lawyers, not me. We don't forget these things. But what we have been done, what's happened to us is the government has dragged us down so much that our productivity is a fraction of what it could possibly be. Imagine, by releasing the yoke of regulation, what new products can be built. Well, we don't even know. It's 2014. Where are my flying cars? It's a joke. Imagine what we can do if we did not have this out of control, overwhelming federal government on our backs. And that's what Barry Goldwater was fighting for in 1964. That's what Ronald Reagan was victorious. That is what we've been fighting for as a Tea Party and as conservative fighters. And it's worth it. I promise you, it's worth that battle because we're going to win in the long run.
Thank you, Mr. Quasman. Mr. Kinney?
Well, let me tell you about the books I've read. When I started doing title work in the oil and gas cut business, I would read all day long deeds, quitclaim deeds, mineral deeds, oil and gas leases, on and on and on. Running title all day long, and I'd get home and I was so cross-eyed, I'd quit reading. And the only book that I've read since then is the Holy Bible. And if we can't get our souls back to where it started, that's where we've got to be. We've got to get prayer back in our school systems, in my opinion. We have to put discipline back in our school systems. Because that's where all the screw-up started. When they quit whipping kids in school for messing up. I mean, I got one every day. It didn't hurt my personality. They said it's going to, now they say it'll warp the personality. It'll warp my personality. It'll warp my Desi hair, I'll tell you that. But the deal is this. You've got to get back to religion in our schools. If we can't stand up and say a prayer in school, we can't say the Pledge of Allegiance in school. That's the foundation of our problems. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Keeney. Now, I have a question that arose in my mind and heart as I listened to both of you. The Bible says that a false balance is an abomination before the Lord. And the man who has a bag with diverse weights is an abomination. The Federal Reserve. The U.S. Constitution says that all bills for raising revenue shall arise in the House. The intent that the founders had in writing that is that the Congress would have the power of the purse and have control of government spending. What role do you think the Federal Reserve has played in undermining those constitutional powers? And what would you do in order to restore those powers back into Congress? Mr. Quasman.
This is my specialty. I mean, I'm an economist. I understand monetary principles and monetary economics. I'm probably the expert of the Arizona House. And how about the fact that we have people on our finance committee in the United States Congress that include Kristen Sinema, who used to be a member of the Arizona Communist Party. She wasn't a Democrat, she was a communist. And she is now a member of not only Congress, but the House Finance Committee. That's a scary fact, ladies and gentlemen. I believe we need to abolish the Federal Reserve immediately. I really do. We need to get rid of the Federal Reserve. They have destroyed wealth in this country through their inflationary policies. Now, let's talk about reality. We're not going to go tomorrow to abolish the Federal Reserve. People talk about an audit. Of course I'm for an audit. It does not go far enough. The way we stop Keynesian, insane governors of the Federal Reserve, including the new chair, Yellen, we institute what's called a Taylor rule. And what that does is it ties the monetary growth rate to the private sector income rate. You would not have the inflation. You essentially have neutered the Federal Reserve, that we could then abolish it after that. So that's the goal. The big picture is we don't need a Federal Reserve at all. I believe that they are the cause of most of our problems economically. But the real politique, where we all have to be honest with ourselves and what's available politically, is getting monetary experts in there, be able to pass pieces of legislation that neuter the Federal Reserve and stop their power of inflating currency and destroying our monetary base. If we do that and we have a strong dollar and a stronger banking system where we don't have some secretive star chamber deciding how much they're going to inflate our currency so they can keep the party going. If we have real monetary policy, the private sector economy will grow and the poorest among us will do better. Because inflationary taxes, it hurts the poor and the elderly the most. We need to make sure that we have a monetary, when we send people to Congress who understand monetary policy, let's be honest, they're going to put me on finance. I'm an economist. That's the committee they're probably going to put me on. And we need people who understand economics and go up there and are able to fight for our Tea Party principles and not stand up and say, I wonder what that person is doing. I'm going to pretend and I'm going to play blackjack while I'm in the committee hearing, while the Federal Reserve Chair runs roughshod over us. That's what I believe.
Thank you, Mr. Klossman. Mr. Kinney?
Well, the Federal Reserve is just another government entity that's screwed up. And they're all the same. And you can pick one after another, after another, after another. And every bit of it, every one of them needs to be revised. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from the floor?
I was wondering how we could elect one of them in for the Senate and the other for Congress.
One for the Senate and one for Congress.
Well, ma'am, if you will, just wait a couple of years, and we'll probably all have to be running against McCain. Thanks.
I'm okay to stay in the House. We'll be fine. You know, we have some, oh, here's a question.
Did we get Arizona out of the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals?
Actually, we can. You know what? We can. That's a House issue. That can be the way we set up those jurisdictions are completely based from the House of Representatives. That is a fantastic idea because it means that our ability to stand up to the federal government doesn't have to pass through the notorious Ninth. That is a fantastic idea. You know what? We need to have a Western states Court of Appeals sector where we have Utah, Arizona, Texas, New Mexico, Idaho, Montana, and the Dakotas. That would be a great Western lands little swath of judicial territory.
Okay, Mr. Kinney, would you like to address that?
I'm sorry I wasn't tuned in, but I think the Ninth Court of Appeals is totally ridiculous. They made such terrible rulings. I don't know enough about trying to get them out, so I just have to look at that and see if we can figure it out. Apologize.
Thank you. Mr. Lopez, do you have a question?
I didn't hear any mention of any Common Core concerns.
Common Core concerns?
I believe on my opening statement that I made, I did say something about Common Core in the fact that Andy Tobin had actually voted for it, and I would totally oppose it. Thank you.
I did totally oppose it. My vote was against Common Core. I stood up for it in the House. I'm the only one here with a record of voting against Common Core.
Thank you very much.
There's a gentleman in the back.
Oh, yes. Mr. Larson.
Yes.
I know you guys talked about the Navajo Generation Plan. I don't know if you've had read the last executive order from the president. It got to APCO Wednesday, and there's no such a thing that any coal plant will be running. That is Springerville and all of them. When they get through reading that,
An
they can't
executive-
meet this.
So you're saying that the executive order is that all coal plants will be phased out by when?
Well, you can't meet the mandate, so you're out.
Middle US.
What's the deadline?
I don't know what the date, he didn't. Our CEO was so like you hit him over the head with a club. He says, boys, if we have to do this, we're through. There will be no power plant, coal power plants run in the United States with this new executive order from the EPA. You know, we got the one we're fighting now. We thought we had it beat. We're gonna operate, spend about $20 million, gonna keep blowing smoke, you know, and going on. Now this come in, you know, about 3 months ago when he gave the executive order that the EPA is gonna do this and that. But here's what they handed down. Find out from your coal power plants up there in the north what this new mandate is. Serious.
Thank you, sir, for pointing that out
We're
for
going
us.
to be all of us are going to get together and we're going to sue the federal government. The only way we can operate.
Thank you, Mr. Larson.
Mr. Larson,
Yeah.
if the federal government hires an attorney that's within your system, just go shut his power off, and then he'll have to type those lawsuits manually as answers.
No, just shut the power off in Washington, D.C.
Yes, this gentleman here has a question.
Devin Gray's the name. We have 3 more years President Obama has left, and with the increase of executive orders that he has been putting in, what can Congress do, and what would you do to stop those executive orders? And can that happen in the Supreme Court, or does it, with government acting as slow as it does, it seems like he'll be out of office before anything can be done or is done, because already he's put in a lot of unlawful executive orders.
Mr. Quasman, go
Yeah,
ahead.
they're unconstitutional, let's be honest. They're blatantly unconstitutional, and he needs to be hauled up in front of a House committee, and he needs to answer for what he's done. It is just blatantly unconstitutional. And we're either going to say it's either constitutional or it's not. And if we don't stop him, then it is giving a tacit agreement that a future president can do whatever he wants. And this is a constitutional republic with a bicameral legislature, not a dictatorship. The president does not get to do whatever he wants. So what we do here is threefold. First of all, we're not going to impeach the President of the United States. And if you want to, the best insurance of impeaching the President is look at President Joe Biden. It's very, very scary to me, too. And it's not going to happen. So let's be honest with ourselves. You know, we have to be honest and adult politicians. And what we're going to do is put in place protections against any future executive order. And we need to pass a legislation package immediately that undoes any executive order. And in any piece of legislation that he wants passed, anything that he wants passed, you remove every executive order. And that's what you have to do. You have to be stalwart. One of the reasons why Clinton moved to the right during the very end of his administration was because he had a Republican Congress that kept on him on every possible chance they had to say, no, we do it this way. No, we're the Congress, we do it this way. We have punted our responsibilities to this President of the United States, and he has run roughshod over us. No more. And we have to be able to start, now listen, do I think Barack Obama is going to catch a sensibility? No, of course not. But we can make life very difficult for him. But that's why we have to win elections, folks. That's it. We have to win back CD1. We have to win back the Senate. And in 2016, we win back the presidency, and the first thing we need to do is put in legislation that not only undoes what he has done, but we have to put in a piece of legislation in the United States Constitution. We need an amendment that stops these executive orders. Now, here's the great thing. There already is an amendment through the House right now. It needs to be placed on the Senate calendar that stops these executive orders. Because a constitutional amendment doesn't get signed by the president. It goes through the Congress, has to pass through both houses, and it has to be signed by the states. I know it's been introduced in the House. I don't know if it passed with a 2/3 majority, but we need to win elections. That's why Ann Kirkpatrick has to go home.
We have the majority in the House now.
You need 2/3 majority, and we don't have a majority in the Senate. We have to win elections. Guys, we get the government we deserve. It's unfortunate, but it's true. So what can we do? Instead of lamenting about the big picture, listen, I want to cry myself to sleep at night every day too, all right? This guy is terrible. He's destroying this country every day. But what can we do now? As citizens of Congressional District 1, we take back Congressional District 1 from Ann Kirkpatrick. It's one less vote for them and one more vote for us. We win our seats. We work every day to win our seats. We might have another couple nickels in our pocket, and we see a senator or a House member in another state, maybe send them a couple nickels. If we're able to make a phone call for an extra seat somewhere, we make that extra phone call. But right now, we have to focus on winning Congressional District 1. That is all we need to be doing. And we will see changes, not at the big picture at first, but every march is one step at a time, guys. And I'm sorry, I wish anybody in this room, Gary cares about this country so much too. We want to fix everything. We need to fix what we can fix. And right now, we are going to remove a radical Obama Democrat from office and replace her with a conservative, proven fighter. That's what we as citizens can do for our part here. The next step is the presidency.
Thank you, Mr. Kenny.
It's only one step at a time is all we can do. But the controlling factor that the House does have is the purse strings. But you got to have people in there that have guts enough to pull those purse strings and not have fear that they're not going to get reelected if they do it. The special interest groups are funding the money, and you got to have somebody that's going to say, hey, you know what? I don't care what this guy's trying to fund me. What's right's right, and we're not going to fund it. Period. Ma'am, did you have a question back there?
Just a statement. There's a lot of press and you get your emails and so on that they're pushing for the impeachment. But if Obama is to be impeached, the executive orders would stand. So you do not want that. You want this other route where you have elected people change what has happened. Because if you impeach him, you can't undo the executive orders. They'll stand. So don't mess with that. When I talked with Senator Flake, when he was here the last time, he was hopeful that this election would change the balance of power to where they would be able to do what you have said.
There was another lady had a question here also.
I have this one for Mr. Wasman. You said, so you believe in E-Verify?
I do.
And you back it 100%?
I believe we need to make sure that we need to have a mechanism as employers that we are not hiring those who are not legally able to work here, and then by not funding E-Verify, we do two things wrong. By not funding E-Verify, we are putting ourselves at risk by continuing allowing to hire illegal aliens and being responsible for those illegal aliens. And we are doing a disservice by creating more economic incentive magnets for more people to come across this border.
Well, here's what I had on your E-Verify. You have a social security number and you have a driver's license. They passed E-Verify. Guess who caught them illegally? Department of Economic Security. So my opinion is we are funding all this federal money for people who can't do their job. That's what's wrong with the government, in my opinion.
So the alternative is to not have E-Verify, and people can legally, I mean, it doesn't, listen,
No,
do I agree with you?
because DES is the one who caught them, not E-Verify.
Right, but.
They said they were clear to work.
Of course, do we need to crack down on fraudulent social security cards? Of course.
E-Verify, if they're gonna be a government business, besides that, you couldn't hire
Right.
anybody the whole time they were.
So we need to
shut
make
down.
sure that E-Verify works well. I would agree with that in a
In
second.
my opinion, it
But-
doesn't work well.
But not having E-Verify doesn't solve the problem either.
Yeah,
So I think we're on the same page. We don't want something that gets broken, right?
yeah.
But,
But a lot of the government's broken the same way because they don't know how to do their job.
please, yeah, of course. I agree with you 100%. We need to make sure that whatever mechanism we have to cut down on waste, fraud, and abuse, of course. Whether it's Medicare, Medicaid, our different programs and entitlements, or whether it's making sure that we have real border security and real immigration
But why do we
security.
need to pay two different entities when the one works, that's been there for many, many years, Department of Economic Security? Why did we then have to bring in